It had been exactly 32 days since the night of the blood moon. 32 days since our son, Caelum, was born. In a human world, a month-old infant is a bundle of soft sighs. But the nature of a Dhampir is a violent, beautiful contradiction. Caelum didn't need years to mature. He needed fuel. His blood stretched his bones and sharpened his mind with a speed that felt less like growth and more like an invasion. Now, at 32 days old, I am no longer looking at an infant. I am looking at a boy who carries the frame of a 3-winter child. He has the agility of a seasoned warrior and the magical potency of an arch sorcerer. Yet he has breathed the air of this world for only a single month. I sat on the edge of the great stone hearth in the solar, watching Caelum. He sat upon a pile of thick winter wolf furs, his messy brown hair, a mirror image of my own, falling over his brow. He was focused on a set of wooden soldiers. But he wasn't playing with them. He was staring at them with an intensity that made the air in the room hum. "Caelum, be gentle," I cautioned, my voice low. He didn't look up. His gold eye, the one that carried the sun's fire, flickered. A soft, amber glow radiated from his small palm. Suddenly, the wooden soldier in his hand didn't just break, it ignited. A tiny, controlled flame consumed the wood in seconds, leaving nothing but a pile of glowing white ash on the furs. Caelum giggled, a sound of pure, innocent joy. He clapped his hands, and the resulting shockwave knocked a heavy candelabra off the mantel. "Another one," I whispered. The door to the solar creaked open. I didn't need to look to know who it was. The air always grew colder when Valerian entered, the scent of ozone and ancient mountain air trailing behind him. My husband, the vampire king, looked diminished. His waist-length silver hair was uncharacteristically messy, and the sharp, aristocratic lines of his pale face seemed deeper. He hadn't hunted in 3 weeks. He refused to leave the wing of the castle where Caelum and I stayed. He was the most powerful predator on the planet, and he was being held hostage by a toddler. "The masonry in the East Hall is cracked," Valerian said, his voice a low rumble. The guards say they heard him laughing, and then the stones simply gave way. "He has breathed the air of this realm for only 32 days, Valerian. Though he carries the frame of a 3-winter child, in his mind, he is still a newborn discovering his hands. He is not a monster. He is simply playing." Valerian walked over. He looked down at our son with a look of such profound, aching love that it broke my heart. But beneath it was a paralyzing fear. He was haunted by the reports from the royal healers, his voice sounding like dry leaves skittering over cold stone. "They call it ether overflow," Valerian murmured, his gaze fixed on our son. He explained that Caelum's soul was producing magic with such ferocity that his physical heart could no longer keep pace. "He is a son trapped in a vessel of flesh, Julian. If he does not find a way to bleed off that pressure, his very soul will ignite and consume him from within. But if he lets that power flood out uncontrolled..." I felt a cold chill settle in my marrow. I knew exactly what he was afraid to say. "He becomes a storm of holy fire that leaves nothing but cinders in his wake," I said, voicing the silent terror that had kept us both awake for 30 nights. Looked down at Caelum. He was blissfully happy, reaching his small hands toward another wooden soldier, unaware that he was a walking calamity. Valerian nodded grimly. "Exactly. And it is only getting stronger, Julian. Today, it is a spark. Tomorrow, it could be the end of every living thing in this valley." Valerian reached out to ruffle Caelum's hair. It was a fatherly gesture, something he had been practicing. But as his hand neared, Caelum turned with a start. A spark of golden light, pure solar energy, shot from the boy's forehead. Valerian hissed, jerking his hand back. I saw the smoke before I saw the wound. A circular black burn had been seared into Valerian's palm. For any other vampire, That touch would have been lethal. For Valerian, it was an agonizing reminder that his son was made of the very thing that was meant to destroy him: the sun. In the first week of Caelum's life, Valerian could hold him for hours. But as our son's ether overflow awakens, his very skin has become a forge of solar light. To a vampire like Valerian, Caelum is now a living sun, beautiful, but impossible to hold without being burned. "Father, sorry!" Caelum looked horrified, his crimson eye filling with tears. "It is nothing," Valerian managed to say, though his jaw was clenched in pain. He hid his hand behind his back. "Go back to your toys, Caelum." Valerian stood up and gestured for me to follow him to the balcony. Once we were out in the cold air, away from the boy's ears, he turned to me. "It is getting worse, Julian. Every day his temperature rises. He is a daywalker, yes, but he is still half vampire. The solar fire in his blood is fighting the darkness of his heritage. It's tearing him apart from the inside. And it's only a matter of time before he loses control completely." "What are you saying, Valerian?" "I cannot protect you," he whispered, the desperation in his eyes. "I am a creature of the sunless world, Julian. If the boy's light surges, I cannot draw near to calm him without being turned to ash. And your heart is mortal. You have no magical wards to shield your flesh. If he releases a true tide of that ether, I will lose you. And I would rather this entire kingdom burn than face an eternity in the dark without you by my side." "He is our son," I snapped, my hazel eyes flashing. "I won't hear you talk about him like he's a monster. I am a creature of the abyss, Julian," he roared. "I know the scent of a predator when I see one. I know what it means to be a danger to everything you love. We have brought forth a being that defies the natural order, an abomination that the heavens never intended to walk this earth." I flinched from the word. Abomination. To Valerian, our son wasn't a miracle anymore. He was a ticking catastrophe. The argument hung between us, bitter and cold. We were two parents drowning in a situation no one in history had ever faced. 2 days later, the tension finally snapped. It was a beautiful morning. The sun was pouring through the high, arched windows of the solar, hitting the floor in long, golden ribbons. Caelum was standing at the glass, his face pressed against it. "Outside," he whispered. "Papa Julian, look. The green." He was pointing at the valley below, where the spring grass was starting to peek through the snow. "We can't go yet, Caelum," I said, trying to distract him. "We must wait for the evening. You know your father cannot walk in this light, and we do not leave him behind. We go when the shadows are long, or we do not go at all." Caelum turned, his face scrunched in a classic child pout. But when a Dhampir pouts, the windows shake. "Want sun? Now!" "Caelum, back away from the window," I commanded, my heart starting to race. "No!" He stamped his foot. A ripple of golden energy tore through the floorboards, sending splinters of wood flying. "Caelum, stop this instant!" I stepped toward him, reaching for his arm. "Stay away!" He didn't mean to do it. I saw the regret in his eyes the second the power left his body. A wave of raw solar heat erupted from him like a solar flare. I didn't even have time to scream. I was lifted off my feet and slammed back against the stone wall. Pain, white and searing, blossomed across my left arm. I slumped to the floor. My vision went blur. I looked down and saw that my silk sleeve had been burned away. My skin was blistered and red. "Julian." Valerian was there in a heartbeat. He had been in the hallway, and the sound of the blast had brought him at a dead sprint. He ignored the sunlight streaming into the room, his skin beginning to smoke as he knelt by me. "You're burned," his voice trembling with a terrifying rage. He looked at Caelum. The boy was huddled in the corner, crying, his hands over his face. Valerian stood up. He didn't look like my husband anymore. He looked like the god of death. His eyes had turned a solid, abyssal black, the sign that his vampire instincts had completely taken over. His hand moved to the hilt of his massive obsidian sword. "Valerian, no!" I wheezed, clutching my arm. "He is a danger to your life." Valerian's voice wasn't a voice. It was a vibration that rattled the teeth in my head. I told you this would happen. I will not lose you to him." "He's a child," I screamed, forcing myself to stand, even as the room spun. I stepped between Valerian and our sobbing son. "If you draw that sword, you'd better use it on me first." The standoff was suffocating. The king of the undead and his mortal consort, facing off over the life of their only child. Thump, thump, thump. A heavy, slow knock echoed through the room. It wasn't the frantic knock of a guard. It was deliberate. The heavy doors swung open, seemingly of their own accord. A man stood in the doorway. He was impossibly tall and gaunt, wrapped in layers of tattered silks that seemed to move like smoke. His skin was the color of wood ash, and instead of eyes, he had two swirling pools of gray mist. "It is a tragedy," the man said, his voice smooth, "to see a house so divided by its own light." Valerian's eyes shifted back to red. He pulled his dark aura in, his brow furrowing. "Lord Zephyr, the Shadow Sorcerer of the Wastelands? You were banished to the Void 3 centuries ago." "The Void is a lonely place, Valerian," Zephyr said, stepping into the room. He didn't walk, he glided. But even there I could hear the pulse of this child. A Daywalker, the first of his kind. Zephyr looked at Caelum, and for a second I saw a flash of hunger in those gray mists. "The boy is suffering. His ether is unrefined. It is like a fire without a hearth. Without intervention, he will burn his own mind to cinders." I clutched Caelum to my side. "And I suppose you have a solution?" Zephyr bowed. "I do. A binding ritual. I can place a seal upon his ether, lacing it with shadow. It will act as a dampener. He will still have his power, but it will be slow. It will be manageable. He will grow like a human, and his magic will only unlock as his wisdom matures." Valerian looked at me. I saw the conflict in him. He hated the idea of a sorcerer touching his son, but he loved me more than he feared Zephyr. He looked at my burned arm, then at Caelum's tear-stained face. "Do it," Valerian commanded. "No," I whispered. "Valerian, we don't know this man. We don't know the price." "The price is his safety, Julian," Valerian said, his voice breaking. "I can't even hold my own son. Please, let him help." Against my better judgment, I nodded. We descended into the lower sanctum, a place of cold stone and ancient pre-vampire runes. The air was thick with the smell of old dust and damp earth. Caelum was placed on a central stone dais. He looked so small against the dark rock. "Papa Julian, I'm scared." "I'm right here, Caelum. I'm not leaving you." Zephyr began the ritual. He drew a circle around the dais with a staff made from the femur of a dragon. He began to chant in a language that made my skin crawl. It sounded like the buzzing of 1,000 insects. Shadows began to bleed from the walls. They weren't like Valerian's shadows, which felt cold but protective. These felt wrong. They were greasy, coiling around the dais like hungry snakes. "With shadow, I veil the sun," Zephyr intoned. "With the void, I claim the light." Claim? Suddenly the coiling shadows turned into jagged, barbed chains. They snapped shut around Caelum's wrists and ankles, pinning him to the stone. "Caelum!" I screamed, reaching for him. A wall of gray force slammed into me, throwing me across the room. I hit the stone floor hard, my head bouncing against the rock. "Julian!" Valerian roared. He drew his obsidian sword in a flash of black steel, leaping toward the dais. "Release them, sorcerer." Zephyr didn't even flinch. He raised his hand, and a wave of gray, misty magic washed over the room. "Freeze, little bat," Zephyr hissed. It was a stasis spell, a powerful ancient magic designed specifically to lock the undead in time. Valerian froze mid-leap. Every vampire guard in the room turned into a living statue. Only I could move, because I was human. "What are you doing?" I shrieked, struggling to my feet. Zephyr laughed, and the sound was like glass breaking. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Caelum. The boy was glowing with a terrifying intensity, but the golden light wasn't staying in him. It was being pulled out through the shadow chains, flowing like liquid gold into Zephyr's staff. "Do you know how long I have rotted in the dark?" Zephyr asked, his gray eyes beginning to glow with a stolen golden fire. 500 years of decay. My body is a husk. But this boy, his ether is the ultimate fuel. With his Daywalker blood, I won't just be a sorcerer. I will be a god who can stand in the midday sun. I will burn your citadel to the ground and build a new world in my image. Caelum's screams were becoming whispers. His skin was turning a pale, sickly gray. He was being drained of his very soul. I looked at Valerian. I could see his eyes. They were still red, still alive. He was fighting the spell with every ounce of his royal blood, but he was trapped. He was watching his son die, and he couldn't even blink. I looked at the obsidian sword, lying on the floor just inches from Valerian's frozen fingers. That sword was forged from the heart of a dead star. It was said to be so heavy that only a king of the undead could lift it. I scrambled toward it. I gripped the leather-wrapped hilt with both hands. "Move," I whispered to my trembling muscles. "Move." I tried to lift it. It felt like I was trying to pull the floor itself up. My muscles screamed. The burn on my arm flared with agony. Zephyr glanced at me and sneered. "Give up, mortal. You are a fly fighting a mountain. Be grateful I'm letting you watch." I looked at Caelum. His golden eye was almost dark. He looked at me and his lips moved. "Papa." Something in my chest broke. It wasn't magic. It wasn't a hidden power. It was the primal, terrifying rage of apparent adrenaline. I didn't lift the sword. I swung my whole body. I used the weight of my soul. "Let him go!" With a scream that tore my throat, I swung the obsidian blade. It hummed with a low, hungry frequency. Crack! I didn't hit Zephyr. I hit the bone staff. The obsidian, forged in starlight, met the dragon bone staff. The staff shattered like glass. The explosion was a physical shockwave. The shadow chains vaporized. The stolen ether, caught in midair, suddenly snapped back toward the dais. The gray stasis spell shattered. I dropped the sword, which felt like it had broken both my wrists, and crawled to the dais. "Caelum! Caelum, wake up!" I pulled his limp body into my lap. He was cold. So cold. "Caelum, please." Valerian fell to the floor, time rushing back into his body so fast he gasped for air. Behind me, the room turned into a nightmare. Zephyr was screaming, his body smoking as the unrefined ether he had stolen began to burn him from the inside out. Valerian didn't use his sword. He didn't need it. He moved like a blur of silver and shadow. He caught Zephyr by the throat and lifted him off the ground. "You used my son," Valerian whispered. "You hurt my Julian." Valerian's hand began to glow with a dark, necrotic red. He didn't just kill the sorcerer. He began to unmake him. He drained every drop of magic, every ounce of life, until Lord Zephyr was nothing but a pile of gray ash and tattered silk falling to the floor. Valerian turned back to us. His eyes were wide with a panic I had never seen in him. He slid to his knees beside the dais. "Is he—" Caelum's chest gave a small, shuddering hitch. His eyes fluttered open. The gold and the crimson were back. Dim, but there. "Papa." "Julian," he whispered. I'm here, baby, I sobbed, clutching him to my chest. I'm here. Valerian wrapped his pale arms around both of us without fear of being burned. He was shaking. The king of the vampires was trembling like a leaf. I couldn't move, Valerian whispered into my hair. Julian, I watched you. I saw you lift the sword. We saved him, Valerian, I said, reaching up to touch his cold face. We saved our son. A week passed. The lower sanctum was sealed forever, and the ash of the sorcerer was scattered to the winds. We realized then that we couldn't suppress Caelum. We couldn't hide his power or bind it with shadows. To do so was to invite monsters like Zephyr to our door. I stood on the balcony of the Citadel, the morning sun warming my skin. It was the first time I'd been out here since the attack. Beside me, Caelum was standing. He looked like a normal 3-year-old, if you ignored the eyes. In his hand, he held a withered rose from the garden. Focus, Caelum, I said softly. Don't push the fire, just give it a little warmth. Caelum narrowed his eyes, his brow furrowed in deep concentration. He wasn't throwing a tantrum. He was trying. A soft, steady glow of golden light pulsed from his palm. It didn't explode. It didn't burn. Slowly, the shriveled brown petals of the rose began to straighten. The color returned, a vibrant, living crimson. He didn't destroy the flower. He chose to heal it. I did it, Papa Julian, he shouted, holding the rose up. You did, Prince, Valerian said. I turned to see my husband standing in the deep shadows of the archway. He couldn't come into the light for the first time. He looked at our son with a pride that eclipsed his fear. He has your heart, Julian, Valerian whispered. The power of a god, but the soul of a man. He will be the greatest king this race has ever known. I walked over to the edge of the shadows and reached in, taking Valerian's cold, pale hand and pulling him as close to the light as he could go. He is both of us, Valerian, I said. He is the dawn. Caelum ran toward us, clutching his red rose, his skin sparkling like crushed diamonds in the morning sun. The long night is over, and our new life has just begun.